We're talking about safe handling today, and I just want to give you kind of an overview because this is a huge subject. Safe handling, what does that mean? So I'm talking about safe handling for both you, keeping yourself safe, keeping the dog safe, keeping everyone around you safe. Handling dogs is dangerous. It's inherently dangerous because you're working with live animals. They all have a sharp end. Safety first, by all means. We can achieve that by following a couple of guidelines. Do the least amount of harm possible. Ideally, you want to do no harm at all. That's always the goal. But in tough situations, you might have to act quickly and assess how to cause the least amount of damage in the moment. Use the least amount of force necessary. This is another part of being an ethical dog trainer or handler. My ultimate goal is to never have to put my hands on a dog. Anytime that you do that, you're putting the dog in conflict, you're putting yourself at risk. All the risks go up, all the dangers go up. It's best if you don't even have to touch the dog, if you just give them a verbal cue and they do exactly what you want, or you can just kind of move your body or lure them with a treat or something. That's always the goal. Basically, you just don't want to have to resort to pushing a dog into its room or kennel, wrestling them to the ground and restraining them as your first go-to. Try something low stress, low contact, always first. Constantly assess the dogs. Of course, you guys know the dogs. You know that you have new dogs. You have dogs that are there every day. You have dogs that are there 3 times a week, maybe once a week. And you know some of those dogs and you know them well. But context is always going to be changing. And dogs are different from day to day. So it's important to always be observing in the moment because it could change from moment to moment. Their body language is really fast and really nuanced. And so if you are not paying attention, you might miss something. So take note of body language, signals, overall health, temperament, minute by minute. Be mindful of the context. Situations change, especially in daycare. Incidents rarely happen out of the blue or without warning. There's usually something that happens that you can point to before an incident happens. Another dog comes into the group, another dog passes by. Go ahead and watch the dogs for any changes in their body language or their behavior or their temperament. And also you may be meeting the dog in the lobby, you may be meeting the dog in the daycare setting or in the hallway or even outside with the owner or they're by themselves. All of that has an influence on how the dog's going to act in that moment and how you're going to have to handle the dog. Stay self-aware. This is super important. Always be mindful of your tone of voice, your volume of voice, your body language, of course, how much tension you're holding in your body, whether you're really stiff, if you're moving really fast, leaning over the dog, or if you're turning your back to the dog. All of these things are super important. How far away you are, eye contact, just kind of be aware of your own body and the effect that you have on the dog. Protect yourself and others. This may seem obvious, but it's worth noting. Always protect yourself and your fellow humans. Preventing physical harm, of course, but also emotional harm. And remember that if a dog bites you, it changes the way that the owner relates to their dog, and sometimes that can be life or death for the dogs that we really care about. On a less serious note, sending a dog home stressed or even a little bit physically hurt from poor handling should be avoided at all times. It's bad for business, which is of course important, but most importantly, it's bad for the animals. And we love the animals, and that's why we got into this line of work in the first place. And so protecting everyone as much as possible. So with that, I know this is really heavy, you guys, but bear with me because it's really important. Whenever you're interacting with a dog, please be aware of what we call your kill zones, where you have your vital organs and arteries and veins and all that. So, of course, that's your neck. Always protect your neck, your abdominal area, and your groin area, which is where you have the femoral arteries. Of course, you want to make sure that you're not getting bit anywhere on your body, but it's always a good practice to get in the habit of protecting these areas, especially, even if you know the dog well, because again, context can change. It's really important to be aware of your body placement and the context of the situation. Anytime you're handling dog, keep these areas out of harm's way, away from the sharp end of the dog, we like to say. Even if you know the dog well, again, I do this with my dogs when I'm putting on a harness, when I'm clipping their nails, when I have to inspect them for any kind of injury. just because it's a really good habit to keep. So if I'm just used to handling dogs this way, then, when it really matters, when I'm handling a dog that's not as safe as my own dogs, I'm already in the habit, I'm already doing it. And B, you never know, if you accidentally step on a toe or if you clip a nail too short, that pain can result in redirected aggression. The dog can have a reaction and just kind of whip around and snap at you, even though in any other situation they would never do that. And you know that they're, in general, a very safe dog. That's always a possibility, and it's just good to not put yourself in any unnecessary risk. I love this picture down here of the dog getting their nails clipped. Obviously this dog is stressed, as most dogs are when they're getting their nails clipped. And you may not do this kind of handling, but say a dog is limping and you need to check what's on their paw. If you have to lean over a dog this way or keep them in one place, this is a great way to do it, because she's got her elbow kind of at the dog's neck. Of course, she's not choking the dog in any way, but she's keeping the dog from being able to whip its head around and bite any of those areas on her body. For dogs, remember, it's all about space. Jamie Migdal, who's the CEO and founder of Fetch Find and an amazing dog trainer, she always says that space is everything for dogs, or distance is everything. Where you are, where the dog is, how far you are. So much of our interaction with dogs and so much of their behavior comes down to space. And if you watch the dogs and you kind of think about this, it's going to ring true, I think, even more and more the more you think about it. Number one, that means distance. A dog may be fine with you being 10 feet away, but not 2 feet away. A lot of stress signals, a lot of those calming signals can be a request for more space, a request for you to maybe back off or get a little bit more distance between you and the dog, or whatever it is and the dog. Sometimes just giving the dog a little bit of space can be helpful. So just taking a step back. Take extra care when you are approaching a dog, when you're closing that distance. Take your time. You can give the dog as much time as they need if you have the time, of course. I know we have to keep moving and we have jobs to do and we have to get the dog out to the person or whatever. I get that. But just make sure that you're not coming at them like really fast or rushing at them. Take your time. Give the dog a little bit of space, give them a little bit of time to breathe and give them some room. We always like for the dog to approach you when possible. Crouch down, turn your side, give the dog a little bit of time to adjust and to come to you. Again, slow down, take a breath, make sure that you're not coming at the dog with any stiffness in your body, that you're not yelling or doing anything that might be perceived as threatening to the dog. And of course, with space is relative to the dog. So where are you in relation to the dog? Are you leaning over the dog? Are you cornering the dog? Are you blocking an exit? Are you between the dog and another dog? All of those things are things to be aware of. Blocking an exit can be a big trigger for some dogs, but it's also necessary in a lot of cases. Standing between the dog and something else, we've talked about kind of breaking the tension between two dogs by walking between them. You have dogs staring at each other and you just walk through just to break the eye contact. That might be all that you need to do. So instead of squirting them with a water bottle or even yelling or clapping your hands, you can just walk between them. And that's kind of the least amount of force necessary for that situation. Avoid leaning over. We don't recommend doing that. You don't need to do that. This is a really great way to get bit, to stress out a dog and to be very threatening. We don't want that to happen. On the other hand, I will recommend Dr. Sophia Yin's low stress handling. She is great. This picture right here with the green check mark is exactly how you want to be close to a dog. So having your side to the dog, being on their level, but not in their face. Avoid eye contact. What this guy in the scrubs is doing is perfect. It's best not to be sitting on the ground because you can't react very quickly if you need to. If you are down on one knee like this, you are less likely to be knocked over by the dog, because you have a little bit more balance. And B, you can get up really fast if you need to. This is just kind of the best position to be in because you can move so quickly in a bunch of different directions if you need to. So definitely take a knee, avoid eye contact, Remember, a dog does not need to smell your hand in order to get a good picture of you. They can already smell you. They already know everything about you. Also, environment. If you're with the dogs in a play group, if you are in an enclosure with the dog, or if you're outside, all of these things can influence the way that you deal with the dog. Remember, especially for longer term boarding or even short term boarding, when you have a dog in a kennel or in a crate or in a room, that dog might perceive that area as their territory, and so you have to take a little bit more care when you're approaching. Some dogs do that more than others. Some dogs are just fine, but be aware. Passing the leash. So a lot of times, especially in the beginning, you will have an owner coming in and handing over the dog to you. So this is where kind of it starts a lot of the time. This is where your handling of the dog starts, with taking the leash. And it may seem like a small thing, but it can be a stressful situation for the dog. They're already restrained because they're on leash. They're being handed to maybe somebody that they don't know in a stressful environment, being taken away from their owner. So you want to take care when you're passing a leash, even between employees. You want to avoid this picture down at the bottom left where this dog is out of control, jumping on the other person. The handler has to be aware of how much leash they're giving the dog and where the dog is. Keep 2 hands on the leash if you can, for both the passer and the passee. Stay upright, don't lean over the dog, don't pass the leash over the dog, because when you do that, you are exposing your abdominal area and you're also exposing your neck, so be aware of that. Try to keep 2 hands on the leash and hold the dog away from your body. So away and to the side is best. This picture right here, these two with the woman in the scrubs, this also comes from Dr. Sophia Yin. And she is actually demonstrating leash walking and what not to do when you're walking a dog. Down on the left, she is holding it tight and up high. You don't want the leash to be too tight at all, but you do want to be sure that the dog doesn't have enough room to lunge at you when you're passing the leash. So it should look a little bit like this when you're passing the leash to somebody else. Feel free to step on the leash if you need to. If the dog is super excited and jumpy, that is another situation that could be dangerous. Putting on equipment is another very stressful situation for a lot of dogs. You are restraining them. A lot of times you're passing something over their head, which is an issue for a lot of dogs. If necessary, go ahead and lasso the dog with a slip lead or regular leash, and you can just make it into a loop and throw it over their head. Keep your face, of course, and your vital areas away from the sharp end of the dog. Approach from the side if you can, especially when you're slipping something overhead. This picture here with the husky, I love the way that he's putting on this harness. He's behind the dog. He's keeping his arm between the dog's face and his face from the side. I love that. I think this is great handling. If you can, if you're slipping something over the dog's head, kind of like with this gentle leader, if you have treats, if you can use treats, that can be a good way to desensitize them to something being put over their head. Entering and exiting enclosures. Basic things with this one, you're staying safe and preventing the dog from escaping or darting out. Approach the enclosure carefully. Make sure that you're not approaching in a threatening way. When it's possible, you want to open the door inward. So you want to be pushing it into the room. Pushing it inward helps to give you a little bit more control. You're in a better position. The dog can't push the door open into you as easily, and you can close it really fast if you need to. Of course, that's given the situation and the setup. Block the gap with your body so the dog can't run out. Lasso the dog if necessary. Reinforce calm behavior and sits. That's always great. It makes the dog more handleable in the future. It sets them up for success, and it makes it so that you don't have to do so much hands-on stuff. So always reinforce the dog for sitting. You can ask them to sit before you let them out. That makes for a better, more polite, safer dog. If you're getting a dog into an enclosure that they're not too keen on going into, you can toss a treat or toss a toy to kind of lure them in. Go in yourself first and coax them in. And also when you're blocking their exit and you're encroaching on their space, it can be a more threatening situation. So if you have to lasso the dog, a lot of dogs are reactive when you're going into the area. And once you get a leash around their neck, it's like a totally different dog. Restraint. If you need to restrain the dog in any way, if you need to clip a nail, if you need to inspect the dog, if there was a scuffle and you need to make sure that there are no injuries, keep your face and vital areas away from the sharp end, like all of these people are doing. Block the dog's face and head from you. Hold the dog firmly but gently. You don't want to be choking the dog in any way. You can, especially if you have a smushy, short-faced dog, you can use a towel to keep their neck in place so they can't whip around and bite you. Hold up the back end with your leg, like in this top picture. This is how I clip all dogs' back nails when I can. It keeps them from whipping around, and you have a little bit more control. They're not sitting down. Use treats if possible, and use 2 handlers if you can, like in the very bottom right. Remember, keep yourself and keep others safe, so when you're restraining a dog, definitely be mindful of where the other handler is, and make sure that you are restraining firmly but gently and keeping your partner safe. If you need to catch a dog, so a dog gets loose and is running around in the hallway, or if you're in the enclosure or in the playgroup area and you need to catch a dog for whatever reason, use your slip leads. I always recommend that everyone have at least one slip lead on them at all times. You can also, like in this picture on the top, you can turn a regular leash into a noose or a slip lead by basically using it backwards. So you're putting the rest of the leash through the handle and using that to toss over the dog. Block the exits. If you have multiple people, this is a little bit easier. Approach the dog sideways, stay calm, keep your voice soft. Sometimes you don't even need to talk at all. It's all about body language first. If it's a small dog, you can throw a towel over them to catch them again. This can be threatening, of course, and a little dangerous. So last resort, with the dogs, you'll kind of get a feel for how the dogs react to you and your body pressure and where you are and how you are. You know, if you do it well and calmly, you can keep everyone safe and use the least amount of force necessary. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it. I will talk to you guys next time.